When someone disappears from your life and only a few weeks later you see them hand in hand with someone else, your first feeling isn't anger, it's shock. Something inside you collapses, as if every memory has just been erased with a single click. They smile, post photos, pretend to be happy while you're still struggling just to breathe again. And you ask yourself, how could they move on so fast? Was I never important at all? But the truth is they haven't forgotten you. They're trying to forget themselves. Narcissists cannot be alone because silence forces them to face the emptiness they've been using others to fill. They need an audience to keep their performance alive, and when you walk away, they rush to find a new one, not out of love, but out of fear of collapse. Their version of love has never been a natural flow. It's an addiction. They don't seek connection. They seek a temporary painkiller to numb the meaninglessness inside their own soul. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that we do not confront in the unconscious will come back to us as fate." Since they never stop to understand themselves, every new relationship is just a replica of the same old fear. They think they're starting over, but in reality, they're only repeating the tragedy, faster, harder, and emptier each time. And soon, what first appears to be a dazzling new beginning turns into the same familiar spiral. The excitement fades, conflicts emerge, the old psychological games resurface, and everything begins to crack. Neither the narcissist nor the new supply realizes that what they call love is nothing more than two ghosts trying to fill each other's void with illusion. That is the journey we're about to step into, to understand what truly happens when they rush to move on, why it all collapses so quickly, and why your silence and healing are the very forces that begin their unraveling. Part 1. The 4 manipulation cycles of a narcissist. To truly understand the psychology of a narcissist, we must look directly at the architecture of their manipulation. A closed 4-stage cycle they repeat with everyone, like a ritual of survival: idealization, manipulation, devaluation, and discard. On the surface, the tactics may look different. With one person, they use sweetness, with another, pity, with someone else, power or sex. But the essence never changes. It's a psychological loop where love is a tool, care is bait, and other people's emotions are fuel. And when you reach the 4th stage, being discarded, replaced, stripped of the special role they once promised you, that is precisely when the narcissist begins stage 1 again with a new supply. The cycle is reborn through destruction itself. What hurts you most is not that they left, but how fast they seem to forget, how easily they can smile with someone new while you're still stitching the wounds they left behind. But once you understand their psychology, you'll see they haven't forgotten you. They simply cannot stay with themselves. Narcissists are like butterflies obsessed with flowers. They don't know how to stop, because nowhere ever feels safe. Their loyalty is not to people, but to the feeling of being adored, admired, seen. When that gaze disappears, they must find another just to feel they still exist. Think back to the first time you met them, that moment that felt like the universe had aligned. The way they listened, the way they looked into your eyes, the way they made you believe they truly understood you. Your heart beat faster, not because you were in love, but because you felt something rare, to be seen. They appeared right when you were most vulnerable, when you needed someone to make the world a little less cold. And so you opened the door. You shared your hidden wounds, your fears, your dreams you'd never told anyone. You thought you were being understood, but in truth you were being scanned. The narcissist observed every reaction, memorized what made you smile, what made you shrink, what made you afraid. They didn't love you. They were mapping you, creating a manual of how to control you. Then they began mirroring you, saying the words you'd longed to hear, liking the things you liked, empathizing with what you valued. You saw yourself reflected in them and called it destiny. But it was only your own reflection projected back to win your trust. That was a 1st stage idealization, where love is not a beginning but a weapon. Once you fall, they move to stage 2 manipulation. They intoxicate you, then make you addicted. One moment sweet, the next cold. One moment they make you feel chosen, the next replaceable. It's not emotional instability, it's strategy. Their goal is emotional dependency, to make you unable to tell what's real and what's not, only that you need them to feel valuable. Then one day they begin to change. The messages fade, the tenderness vanishes, the affection turns distant. You panic, you try harder, and in that very effort you sink deeper into their trap. They predicted it. They know you'll try to save the relationship because you don't want to lose the love that once made you feel alive. But they never feared losing you because they never truly had you. Once they feel you're secure in their grasp, they shift into stage 3, devaluation. Now they start to destroy your self-image from within. They criticize what they once praised, go silent when you need comfort, make you doubt yourself, and convince you that everything wrong is your fault. They wound you with words disguised as feedback. They call you sensitive, selfish, distrustful, demanding. Slowly you stop trusting your intuition and only trust their voice. That's when they win, when you've lost faith in yourself and become their perfect puppet, their ideal supply. But soon, they grow bored not because you did anything wrong, but because you're no longer new. What they crave isn't you. It's the thrill of conquest. When the admiration in your eyes fades, they stop feeling special. And so comes stage 4, discard. To you, it's an earthquake, a collapse. To them, it's instinct. They leave not out of anger, but out of fear. Fear of the emptiness that comes when there's no one left to mirror them. And so they rush to find someone new. Not out of love, but out of the need for another energy source to avoid facing themselves. Your ending becomes someone else's beginning. The same script starts again, the smile, the gaze, the promises, the familiar gestures that once made you believe in miracles. But each repetition loses more of its soul, and they die a little more inside each time. You, the one who was once caught in the play, now have the chance to see the entire stage. You are no longer in the game, you are the witness. And though it hurts, you understand. It was never love, it was an emotional addiction they cannot escape. Narcissists don't truly move on fast. They only run fast away from truth, away from shame, away from the void inside they can't face. And you, even if limping, even if still healing, are walking out of that circle. That's the greatest difference between you and them. They repeat, but you evolve. Part 2. When the new supply starts to crumble, and the narcissist realizes they can't recreate the old magic. Every narcissist lives by one hidden belief, that they can recreate the magic with anyone. They believe that as long as they're charming enough, clever enough, attuned enough, they can make someone love them the way you once did. To them, every new relationship is a fresh stage to replay the old role, and they tell themselves, this time will be different, this time they'll stay in control, this time they won't get hurt. But the laws of psychology and energy never allow that. No one can replicate magic that was born from truth. At first, they do everything as before. The intense eye contact, the sweet words, the attentive gestures. The new person, untouched by their damage, sees them as a miracle. He's different, isn't her? She's so deep. I've never met anyone who makes me feel so seen. The same story repeats, detail by detail. But within weeks, something strange begins to happen. The magic no longer works. What once felt intoxicating now feels rehearsed like a song that's been played too many times. Because deep down, the narcissist no longer believes in their own act. They're not performing to connect, they're performing to escape the void. And when an actor no longer believes their role, the audience can feel it. The new supply begins to sense something off. First as intuition, then as unease, then as exhaustion. The narcissist tries to keep the image intact, but the energy has shifted. Their charm, confidence, and mystery, once their weapons now feel heavy, hollow, they start to lose rhythm, to recycle the same compliments, the same tactics, the same dramatic patterns. But this time it doesn't work. The new supply doesn't mirror them the way you did, doesn't react fast enough, doesn't admire deeply enough. When they realize their old power no longer works, panic sets in. What makes a narcissist feel alive isn't love, it's your reaction. When that reaction weakens, fear creeps in. Fear of aging, of losing appeal, of being replaced, of being seen through. This fear is not just psychological, it's spiritual. It's the cracking of the false self, what Jung called the collapse of the inflated self. They look at the new supply and see a terrifying reflection, eyes that no longer glow with admiration, but flicker with doubt, fatigue, and distance. In that gaze, they see you again the way things ended, the truth they refuse to face. The collapse of the new supply isn't an accident, it's karmic law. When they sow illusion, they become trapped within illusion. Every script they write consumes another piece of their soul. Eventually, their energy runs out. No reflection is bright enough to make them believe in themselves again. And then it happens. They look at the new person and see only your shadow, not your face, but the echo of what they destroyed. They remember your laughter, your listening, your reactions to their lies. But now, in the new person, they meet only coldness. The truth creeps in like a crack in glass. You cannot recreate something real with something false. You love them with your soul. The new person only knows their mask. The magic they thought they created was never theirs. It was the light reflected from you. When you withdrew, all that remained was darkness. Slowly, they find themselves talking too much, justifying too much, exploding for no reason. They repeat the same lies they once told you, but now they fall flat. The new supply doesn't react, or reacts wrong, and that's when the illusion of power collapses. The narcissist feels that collapse in their very selves. They can't name it, but they feel disconnected from themselves. The fake confidence dissolves, and they experience a primal emptiness, the collapse Jung spoke of. No reflection, no role, no audience. They are left with the echo of shame and fear. But instead of facing it, they restart the cycle, chasing yet another supply, faster each time, emptier each time. They're running from themselves, yet every road leads back to the same place, truth. And there, something happens they never expected. Consciousness cracks open. Deep within, beneath all denial, a small part of them, the buried human self, knows they lost something sacred when they lost you. That part cannot die. It can only be buried. And when illusion collapses, that buried self begins to awaken not in light but in pain. They begin the dark night of the ego, where every mask falls and there is no one left to blame. You may never see this. On the outside, they still appear fine, still flaunting their new life, still performing happiness. But inside, they are decaying. Without applause, they hear the true echo, and it terrifies them. They realize that no one can make them feel alive the way you once did, not because you were a better supply, but because you loved for real, and real love cannot be duplicated. It leaves an energetic imprint that all their future imitations can only mimic. This is the spiritual depth of the cycle. Illusion, collapse, awakening. The narcissist thinks they're running from pain, but in truth they're running toward its core. They think they're beginning again, but they're only repeating the end. Every miracle they try to recreate is just a faint copy of the light they once received from you, and one day they will realize that light never belonged to them. It came from your soul, from your authenticity, from the unconditional love they betrayed. And when that realization dawns, part of them will shatter, and the rest, if strong enough, will begin to seek their way back to themselves. As for you, the soul once wounded by them, you have become the true mirror. You no longer reflect for them, but for the universe to prove that love never dies. It only changes form. It withdraws from false places and returns to where it can grow. Within you, in clarity, in peace, in the light of consciousness. And that is where the cycle ends for them, but begins for you. The cycle of awakening. Part 3. The illusion of moving on. When a narcissist steps out of a relationship, they don't really walk, they run. Not away from you, but from the emptiness that just cracked open inside. They fear the silence after you're gone, because in that silence, the echo of their own self becomes too clear. The echo of guilt, of shame, of the falseness they've worn for years to keep that perfect image from collapsing. That's why they must replace you immediately. A new face, a new romance, a new energy source, anything loud enough to drown out the authentic voice knocking at the door of their mind. What they call moving on is really a ritual of denial. They're trying to prove to the world and to themselves that they're unaffected, that they're fine, that they've won. Yet in that frantic performance, they expose their deepest fear, the fear of being forgotten, of no longer being seen, of becoming invisible. The harder they try to look happy, the more they are haunted by the inner void. The faster they fall in love, the emptier they feel once the high wears off. Carl Jung once wrote, "Whatever we deny within ourselves will eventually appear outside as fate." If they cannot accept their loss, life forces them to relive it through others. So the new supply becomes the stage on which they reenact a tragedy that never ended. There they play the perfect partner, the ideal lover, the enlightened one, until the mask starts to crack and the shadow spills out like an inevitable disaster. You see, they cannot move on because they never truly moved through. A person only moves forward after stopping long enough to understand what broke inside them. Narcissists don't do that. They skip the work, leap over the pain, dust new romance over old ashes, and call it a fresh start. That's why every relationship follows the same orbit, blazing fast, burning out early, leaving toxic smoke behind. In truth, they don't love the new person. They love the sensation of power when someone believes their illusion. Each infatuated gaze is a dose for a trembling ego. Each compliment a shield against the shame they refuse to face. They love their own reflection in another's eyes, never the other person's true self. And that's why it collapses so quickly. No illusion, however finely painted, can resist the weight of truth. As novelty fades, as the new supply begins to notice the cracks, as old behaviors return, this counterfeit love peels off like paint on rotten wood. The narcissist, instead of awakening, blames, "They're just like all the others." They don't see that they are the common denominator of every tragedy. That is the beginning of the collapse. Not because they lost you, but because they can no longer hold together a mask that's splitting apart. And you, by your silence and by not going back, are accelerating that process more than ever. Part 4. The mechanism of the rapid collapse. A narcissist's collapse with a new supply doesn't arrive with a loud crash. It begins in silence, like a hairline cracked beneath a flawless coat of paint. At first, no one notices, not even them. They still laugh, still say, "I love you," still manufacture moments that look radiant, but counterfeit energy can't sustain itself. As the early high fades, they start to see each other more clearly, and that's when the illusion melts. A narcissist can't maintain a stable reality because they themselves are built on sand. Their entire personality depends on the reactions of others. While the new supply is awestruck, gazing up with reverence, the narcissist feels alive. But the moment the new person asserts preferences, sets boundaries, or simply shows less enthusiasm, a chain reaction begins. Threat ignites. Anger seeps in. And the terror of being exposed, not truly lovable, not truly competent, starts to spasm inside them. They don't know how to face that terror, so their only response is destruction, first of others, then of themselves. They replay exactly what they did to you: control, silent treatment, narrative, bending, blame shifting, manufactured drama. But this time, the new supply isn't as bonded. They are more lucid than you were at that stage. They haven't been fully pulled into the game, so when something feels wrong, they step back. And in that moment, the narcissist begins to panic. From a psychological standpoint, this is where mask fatigue sets in. Sustaining a false self is exhausting, like acting on stage without ever leaving the spotlight. Every word, every gesture, every smile must be calculated to stay in character. But human nature can't be compressed forever without revolt. Fatigue exposes seams, a flash of impatience, a cold remark, a power-demanding attitude. The new supply senses the misalignment, even if they can't yet name it. Jung wrote, "No one can wear a mask for long without forgetting the face beneath." That's what's happening. The ideal lover mask is splitting. Underneath, the shadow, self-interest, contempt, emptiness pushes through. Once the shadow is triggered, everything accelerates almost reflexively. They test, they punish, they withdraw affection, they manufacture guilt to tighten control. From that moment, the relationship heads downhill. Picture a castle built of mirrors. When real light shines in, the mirrors don't reflect, they shatter. You once were that light. When you withdrew, they tried to rebuild the glow with someone else, but counterfeit light can't hold a hollow structure. What collapses is not just the new relationship, it's the entire illusion they carry. And they begin to feel an even deeper emptiness because now they've lost two mirrors. You, who once reflected them most truthfully, and the new person who never could. The brutal part is, they understand this, but will never admit it. Instead, they blame the new person, smear the old one, and spin yet another story to protect their pride. Still, the truth leaks out through every action, every outburst, every sleepless night. They lie beside someone else, but their mind replays old scenes where they had power, were trusted, were truly seen, not because they miss you, but because they miss existing through you. And the new supply. They move from confusion to exhaustion to self-doubt, just as you once did. The difference is, this loop runs faster and hits harder. The narcissist's energy is waning. They need more drama to keep the illusion alive. When the new person won't supply enough reaction, the narcissist escalates. Anger, manipulation, even psychological abuse. As always, it ends in shards. You may never witness it with your eyes, but the universe is precise. When someone lives by deceit, deceit soon betrays them. When they use love as a tool, love turns its back. Their collapse doesn't require your presence, only your absence. Without a reflection, the mask falls faster than ever. That is why you don't need revenge. Truth does its own work. And once it begins, its speed is astonishing. Part 5. When the mask falls, in silence. It's not an explosion, not a screaming match. The collapse between the narcissist and the new supply always begins in what looks like the calmest moments. A dinner without laughter, a hollow gaze between two people sitting side by side, a message sent that is met with a long, echoing silence. No one says a word, but the soul of the relationship has begun to separate from its body. At first, the narcissist fights that feeling with the usual tricks. An unexpected gift, a few promises, a string of sweet words so sugary they taste fake. But the sweetness no longer works because the energy behind it is no longer real. They can say, "I love you," yet the other person's heart feels nothing. It's like hearing a song whose rhythm remains, but whose melody has died. What the narcissist can't grasp is this. Every relationship they touch meets the same fate, not because people are all the same, but because they carry the same internal program. One of fear, fear of abandonment, fear of not being noticed, fear of losing power. When real love asks for honesty and vulnerability, they run. When intimacy asks them to remove the mask, they counterattack. And with every counterattack, they destroy the very thing they crave most, connection. The first fractures arrive in silence. The new supply starts to feel a strange energy fatigue, tension without knowing why. They don't realize they're living with a person who harbors an endless hunger for validation. Everything they do, their words, looks, actions, is analyzed and distorted to serve control. They slowly realize this love doesn't make them bloom. It drains their life force, drop by drop. The narcissist senses the shift. They see that the new supply no longer looks at them with reverence. To them, that is betrayal. They need no evidence. The feeling of losing center stage is enough to ignite their rage. But this time, they don't have the energy to explode. They are exhausted. Anger turns into silence, the toxic, heavy kind that forces the other person to apologize without knowing why. Carl Jung once said, "The shadow is that which we do not wish to see in ourselves." When the new person begins to touch their shadow, selfishness, deceit, woundedness, the narcissist does the only thing they know. They run. But the more they run, the more their shadow chases them. They grow suspicious, controlling, cold. then suddenly perform warmth again, all to keep the other person trapped in an emotional loop. This time, though, something subtle is different. The new supply hasn't been fully tamed. They begin to notice the pattern. A vague intuition appears. Maybe it isn't me. And that is when the mirror of illusion starts to crack. When the other person stops reflecting the perfect image, the narcissist no longer knows who they are. They fall into an ego void, forced to face the truth they've avoided all their life. There is nothing inside. From there, the self-destruct sequence begins. They manipulate harder to regain control. The new person resists. They rage, smear, then apologize, cry, and beg. The cycle spins, weaker each time. The mask doesn't shatter with a bang. It loosens in the quiet of eyes that no longer believe. In the end, as the new person grows exhausted or starts to leave, the narcissist will try to revive the old bond. They bring up you. They speak of you as an unhealed wound, as if showcasing their depth. In truth, it's fear. You are the one thing they couldn't destroy, the truest mirror. You, the one who saw through them, are the memory they cannot manipulate, and the reason every relationship after you collapses faster. What they don't realize is that you didn't just leave, you took the light of awareness with you. When that light vanished from their life, only darkness remained. From then on, everyone they meet merely reflects that inner void, and their inner world begins to rot. No one needs to do anything. Your silence, time, and truth will complete the work. That is how their mask falls, not with noise, but with the stillness of a soul that has nowhere left to hide. Part 6. When the narcissist tries everything to drag you back into the mud, when the old magic dissolves, when the new supply starts pushing back, and when your silence becomes a mirror, exposing everything, that is when the narcissist truly panics. They cannot bear the emptiness, not because they've lost you, but because they've lost control of you. In their mind, your leaving wasn't a breakup, it was a rebellion. You didn't just end a relationship, you escaped the power ecosystem they built. To them, that's unforgivable. As the new supply grows cold, they look back at you, the one who used to react the right way, who once believed, forgave, and cried. You are the fertile ground where they once planted the seeds of control. Now that the new ground is barren, they return to you like an addict chasing the first high. But this time, they don't come to love you, they come to pull you down. They start with seemingly harmless signals, a short text, a vague status, a just checking in call. Every word, every punctuation mark is calculated to awaken fragments of memory you're trying to let go of. They know you have a heart. They know you once loved for real. They will weaponize that. I miss you. I just want one last conversation. I've changed. They'll choose the moment you're softest. Just as you find a little peace, they knock, bringing the familiar voice and the eyes that once melted your resolve. Remember, this isn't love returning, it's control returning. They don't reach out because they're lonely. They reach out because they've lost their mirror. They can't stand your lack of reaction. In their world, your silence is an insult. It proves you no longer center them. That hurts more than hatred, because hatred is still attention, while indifference is the total annulment of their power. So they deploy every tactic to drag you back into the mud, that low energy state where you were once confused, doubting, and self-blaming. They know your soft spots, compassion, guilt, a savior's impulse, and nostalgia for the beautiful beginning. They'll feign, hurt, cry, apologize, tell tragic stories about childhood and a pain no one understands. They'll play the perfect victim, and if you're not careful, you'll become the rescuer again. Psychologically, this is emotional regression. They try to pull you back into the old emotional state where you were compliant and dependent. They'll say things like, "You've changed. You're not the person I knew," to make you feel guilty for growing. They'll try to label you cold or heartless, to awaken shame and push you back into the good person role they can control. Sometimes they won't come back with sweetness, but with chaos. They'll spread rumors, make insinuations, provoke you anything to get a reaction, because to them, your reaction equals their energy. Love or hate, if you're still thinking about them, they still exist. They'll smear you, fabricate stories, contact your friends, even accidentally show up where you are just to pull your focus. Jung said, "Darkness doesn't disappear by being hated. It weakens by being seen with awareness." What a narcissist fears most is you seeing them clearly. Once you understand this mechanism, you no longer play. You don't react, rage, or explain. You simply witness, and that is the highest freedom. On a spiritual level, this is when darkness tests light. As you climb out of the mud, darkness reaches to pull you back. It won't arrive in monstrous form, but as memory, emotion, and the voice that once convinced you love could save everything. But real light never needs to save. It only needs to remain what it is. If you waver, if you give them one last chance, you'll find yourself in the same maze. 2 weeks of goodness, then indifference, then devaluation, then discard. They haven't changed, only their techniques have. Their core is not behavioral. It's structural, a distorted soul, architecture where love and control are fused. When sweet talk fails, they shift to panic tactics. They'll try to trigger your fear. I'm desperate. I might do something stupid. I've lost everything. It's all to make you feel responsible for them. They know you're empathetic, and they bet your compassion will overpower your discernment. Understand, this isn't a cry for salvation. It's the final chain they're tightening around you. And here is the final exam of healing. Are you awake enough not to be dragged back into the mud where you once drowned? That mud isn't just them. It's every old belief in you that said you must suffer to be loved, sacrifice to be recognized. Each time they return, it's an invitation back to hell dressed up as love. This time, you can smile and say, "No, I've learned this lesson." When you keep your silence, when you don't react, when you refuse to step back into the mud, something miraculous happens. Their manipulation loses power like wind blowing into a void with nothing to strike. They grow frantic, disoriented, and erode within their own chaos. This isn't you beating them, it's light prevailing over shadow. You don't have to prove, speak out, or expose. Every minute you choose peace over chaos, you declare to the universe that you no longer belong to that terrain. You've graduated the lesson, and now they will remain trapped in it. They'll keep seeking new people, repeating the cycle, trying to recreate the magic, but magic only exists for those whose souls can still believe. And you who stepped out of the mud, faced the truth, and chose self-love, are exactly what they can never comprehend. True power isn't making someone stay. It's leaving without resentment. When you keep peace in your heart, you become what they can never manipulate, a free soul. Part 7. The soul without a reflection. When the illusion shatters, a narcissist doesn't fall into ordinary pain. They fall into absolute emptiness. With no supply left to reflect a sense of existence back to them, they begin to experience what Jung called ego disintegration, a state in which every mask, every role, every lie loses its effect. The world around them is no longer a stage. It becomes a labyrinth with no audience, no applause, only the dry echo of their own voice. At first, they try to compensate for that void with noise. They turn to social media, where borrowed gazes can briefly soothe the addiction to attention. They post photos, write statuses, even publicly perform happiness. But the energy is counterfeit. It's like a thirsty person drinking seawater. The more they drink, the thirstier they become. Every like deepens the emptiness, because on some level they know no one there truly sees them. With no one left to blame and no one left to manipulate, the only thing that remains is themselves bare without a shell. That is what they fear most. Because beneath the arrogance, control, and charm, the narcissist is a panicked child, abandoned in the darkness of their own psyche. That child never learned love, only performance for attention. And now, with the curtain fallen and the roll over, they don't know how to live when no one is looking. The soul without a reflection. That's how Jung would describe the phase in which a person loses connection to their true center. The narcissist hasn't only lost you. They've lost the mirror that allowed them to feel real. In your silence, they have no definition for themselves. That silence is peace for you, but for them, it is hell. Because in that dark quiet, The old whispers return. You're not enough. No one loves you. You're a fake. Not everyone survives this moment. Many narcissists spiral, scrambling to restore power at any cost. They may reach out to you not out of love, but out of fear of drowning in the void. They may feign remorse, fall ill, or morph into the misunderstood victim. But if you're alert, you'll notice one thing. Their words carry no true energy. There's no soul in them, only a lifeless string of sounds arranged to trigger your compassion. On a deeper level, Jungian analysts describe a phenomenon called shadow substitution. When someone loses contact with their own light, they try to parasitize the light of others. That's why they seek souls that are bright empaths, truth tellers, healers. To them, you weren't just a partner. You were a survival power source. They clung to you not because of love, but because standing near you let them appear illuminated. When you left, that darkness swelled and swallowed what remained. By now, the new supply, if still present, also begins to burn out. They feel as if they're loving two different people, sweet one moment, distant or even cruel the next. The harder they try, the deeper they're pulled into a black emotional hole. All the energy they give is absorbed without reciprocity. Slowly, they lose vitality, confidence, and direction, exactly as you once did. The collapse of the new supply mirrors the entire loop the universe is forcing the narcissist to witness. They are the cause of the destruction they keep creating. Here's the paradox. The more they're abandoned, the more convinced they become that they're right. They craft the story. Everyone betrays me. I always meet the wrong people. I'm too good, so I get used. This self-victimization becomes the final barricade protecting a collapsing ego. They don't realize they're living what Jung called enantiodromia, when a quality pushed to its extreme flips into its opposite. Precisely when they try hardest to prove their innocence, they're forced to face their guilt. When they assert strength, their rawest weakness is exposed. The more they run, the more they are pulled back. The more they try to forget, the more they remember. The more they seek control, the more they lose it. Punishment doesn't come from you. It arises from their own psychic machinery, a self-executing law of the shadow. You don't have to wish them suffering. They are already tasting it, day by day, night by night, inside their own mind. Part 8. When darkness returns to its source. There comes a moment when every illusion must pay its debt, and for the narcissist it arrives when there's no one left to blame. As the new supply begins to leave, as sweet words lose their magic, as no one believes the story anymore, every layer of makeup starts to melt. The most frightening part isn't being left behind, it's being forced to face what they've spent a lifetime fleeing, themselves. Narcissists cannot bear stillness, because in stillness everything they buried rises: memories, shame, fear, weakness, and above all, meaninglessness. Jung said, "There is nothing more terrifying than to face oneself in the mirror." That is exactly what they must do when all external reflections fade. For the first time in years, there is no one left to perform with. No lead role, no audience, only a solitary soul in a room full of echoes. Their mind becomes a battlefield. One part wants to keep running, find someone new, stir drama, invoke your name, anything to feel noticed again. The other part, tired and confused, drifts into the void. Like an addict riding out withdrawal, they convulse in the absence of emotional fuel. Your silence, once dismissed, now becomes a wall that throws every cry back at them. They scream inside, "Why won't anyone hear me?" And the universe, cold and fair, answers only with silence. Some try to resurrect themselves with new illusions: work, status, religion, the costume of the good person or the victim. They spin new narratives about being betrayed, used, misunderstood. But the more they repeat the story, the more they fuse with it. They become the very pain they refuse to own. If they can't find a new role to inhabit, the collapse begins to eat them from the inside. Insomnia, anxiety, fear of being forgotten, fear of meaninglessness. The feelings they once planted in others now return to their rightful owner. This is the energetic law Jung called the return of the repressed. Whatever is pushed into the shadow comes back stronger and fiercer. All the manipulation, falseness, and counterfeit power they use to dominate others becomes a blade turned inward. Outwardly, they may still smile and flaunt success. Inwardly, every day is a private crisis, unseen yet gnawing at them piece by piece. They look at the new supply with dull eyes, because that person no longer helps them escape themselves. Every word, glance, and silence reflects what they hate most. They are not real. And the irony is, the more they try to control, the less control they have. The more they cling, the more they are left. The more they chase love, the lonelier they become. And you, the truest mirror they ever had, are no longer there. Your absence becomes the loudest sound in their mind. They don't miss you out of love. They miss what you symbolize, the one thing they could never possess through deceit truth. In every dream, in every memory, your image flickers not as an X, but as a spiritual verdict. This is what you lost when you chose illusion. Jung reminded us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the narcissist's tragedy. They see the darkness, yet lack the courage to take responsibility for it. They would rather blame the world and weave fresh illusions than touch the real wound. So they keep falling slowly, silently, inevitably. No one pushes them. They're pulled down by the gravity of their own lies. At a deeper level, this isn't merely personal collapse, it's energetic return. Every manipulation, every lie, every harm finds its way back to its source. There's no mystical karma, only the psyche's natural law of balance. The shadow always returns to the one who cast it. Layer by layer, their mask liquefies. From the charmer to the pitiful, from the controller to the haunted. They end up trapped in the very game they invented only now. No one plays with them anymore. You don't need to witness it. Every day they live without your reflection is another day they die, a little inside the emptiness they once fed to others. And that is when the darkness fully returns to its source, to them. No one left to deceive, nothing left to hide, nowhere left to run. Only truth remains. And truth, as Jung said, will always demand its price through pain, but also through awakening. Part 9. When the light no longer shines on them. When you leave, they think you were just a supporting character in their life story. Time proves the opposite. You were the light source that kept their fabricated world alive. That light isn't something they understood, it's something they consumed. While you were there listening, empathizing, trying to heal you unintentionally, became the only energy supply that helped them feel alive. Like a lamp illuminating someone who has lived too long in darkness, you made them believe they could be saved. But instead of learning to light themselves, they tried to possess your light. And when you switch it off through silence, by withdrawing your energy, by refusing to react, they don't just lose you, they lose the last prop their ego was leaning on. No one outside notices this. Online, they seem fine. They still post photos, still smile, still flaunt the new supply as a win. But the perceptive will see the difference. The eyes are dimmer, the smile lifeless. When a soul has been living off someone else's light, being cut off becomes an invisible punishment. They can no longer feel natural joy, no longer find interest in what once excited them. Everything turns flat. It's a fading they'll never dare to name. Jung said, when the light of consciousness withdraws, the darkness of the unconscious takes its place. That is what's happening. When your light no longer shines on them, their unconscious, the part they've always avoided, surges up. But this time there's no one to blame, no one to see for them, no one to siphon energy from. All that remains is a vast emptiness echoing with the one honest question, what have you done? At first they resist. They try to re-establish the link, often with small gestures, a harmless check-in, a gentle text, a coincidental appearance where you frequent. In truth, these are energy probes, testing whether your light still reflects, whether you still wobble. If you don't, if you simply stay silent, smile, and walk on, they enter real panic. When they realize you've changed, that you are no longer the mirror reflecting back the image they wanted to see, their entire psychological structure starts to crack. You used to be living proof that they were lovable, desired, special. Now that proof is gone, and they're left with the truth. No one is watching. For a healthy person, that's an invitation to look within. For a narcissist, it's a sentence, because there is no inside they know how to see. So they begin to unravel from the inside out. Everything that once made them feel powerful, the gaze of others, attention, the strong persona, turns hollow. Without energetic feedback, they flail like a puppet whose strings have snapped. Some will manufacture drama to feel alive again, smearing, bragging, feigning love, even slandering you. But it's only the final convulsions of a dying ego. The more they thrash, the more clearly the truth shows. They are being swallowed by the very darkness they once cast. And you, the light, have learned the essential thing. Light doesn't have to shine everywhere. Light has the right to choose its direction. When you turn it toward yourself, not out of selfishness but wisdom, the universe reorients with you. You're no longer there to save anyone. You live truthfully, and truth itself heals. On a deeper level, when the light withdraws, the universe begins to reset the balance. What isn't real falls. What lives by pretense dissolves. The narcissist thinks they've lost you, but what they're losing is the very spark within that you once helped awaken. Without that spark, they regress to something primal: suspicion, agitation, self-destruction. Every relationship they touch afterward becomes a distorted copy of you. They search for you in everyone and never find you, because they never understood that the light you brought wasn't external. It was a reflection of truth, and truth cannot be duplicated. That's when you understand your silence doesn't just hurt them, it undoes them. Not because you punish them, but because they lived too long on light that was never theirs. Now that the light has returned to where it belongs within you, darkness has no choice but to retreat to its source. Part 10. When the price becomes the awakening, there comes a stage when even a narcissist no longer has the strength to pretend. No stage, no audience, no one left to manipulate with eyes or voice. The roles are spent, yet the true tragedy hasn't ended, it has only begun. This is no longer a power game or a two-person revenge plot. This is where psychology meets soul, where the universe's law of balance enforces itself through absolute stillness. With no reflections left, they're forced to face what they've avoided all their life, the bare fact of their own existence. There are no excuses, no scapegoats, only the echo of the false I they once worshipped, now sagging and collapsed, exposing the rot at the core. They don't hurt because they lost you. They hurt because for the first time they feel so empty they can no longer sense who they are. For a being who survives by others' reflections, that is a kind of extinction. Deeper still, they begin to feel the backdraft of the energy they once put out. Every lie, every manipulation, every staged tear returns not as punishment, but as mirrors. Everyone they meet after you carries the imprint of what they inflicted. The wary one, the guarded one, the unbelieving one. Looking into them, they see themselves in the form they long denied. This is the subtlest price. To be made to live inside the world created by your own energy. Some try to flee by clinging to a new supply, changing roles, staging another play. But the harder they try to recreate it, the clearer it becomes that what they're chasing is gone for good. Because what they crave isn't love, it's the feeling of being seen the way they want to be seen. And you, the only one who ever truly saw them, are no longer there to sustain the illusion. The naked truth drops them into what Jung called a soul. Cut off from its center, the cord between the true self and the outer image has snapped. They remember you not out of love, but because memories of you are tied to a time when they still felt alive. You are the last afterglow of real light in their life. In that glow, they were once seen and understood, if only briefly. Instead of cherishing it, they crushed it. Now they live with an unquenchable thirst, the gaze, the safety, the aliveness they themselves destroyed. Jung wrote, "When a person cannot face their own darkness, it appears in the world as fate. So it goes. Their fate is the loop seeking light elsewhere, replaying the old script, collapsing again. Each cycle grows shorter and more chaotic as their energy wanes and there's nothing left to grip. What they called loving fast, forgetting fast, has become burn fast, ash early. No one believes them anymore, not even themselves. The most frightening part isn't loneliness. It's realizing your silence carries no taste of winning or losing. It is simply permanent. No more manipulation, no more reactions, no more emotional power. You are no longer a character in their story. And that is the deepest wound a narcissist can feel, to have no place in anyone's mind. From here, the real collapse unfolds not in tears, but in the fading of the soul. Each morning they wake emptier than the day before. Each time they face the mirror, the same face stares back, but the eyes are unrecognizable. They begin to understand too late that what they lost wasn't just a person, but their last chance to salvage the human part left within. Meanwhile, you once caught in their vortex are elsewhere now, where light doesn't have to fight to be acknowledged. You've stepped off the stage and learned to live without an audience. You understand that victory isn't measured by how much they hurt, but by how peaceful you've become, so peaceful you no longer need to care. Their punishment is precisely what you don't need to witness. The greatest price isn't losing another, it's losing your own soul. And that is what the narcissist now experiences day after day quietly, without witnesses, without an epilogue. Only darkness, slowly consuming the last echo of a soul once lit by real light and never learned how to keep it. Part 11. When you become a different mirror, there's one thing they will never understand. You didn't leave to hurt them, you left so you wouldn't have to reflect their falsehood anymore. That is why your leaving becomes the greatest spiritual shock of their life, not because they lost love, but because they lost the object that sustained their illusion. For the first time, the narcissist meets a reality they cannot manipulate, the silence of someone who has awakened. That silence isn't cold. It radiates a very specific energy, the energy of a person who no longer fears, no longer rages, and no longer needs to prove anything. In that light, they realize that every relationship afterward, every new supply they try to create, is only a warped mirror reflecting themselves without depth, without vitality, without soul. In truth, they still think of you, but not romantically. They think of you as the final gatekeeper of truth, the one before whom they cannot lie. Each time they remember you, they don't see love, they see reflection. The place where they were truly seen without being judged. They hate that, and they crave it. This paradox tears their mind in two. Carl Jung said, "Only when we confront our true soul do we begin to live." Most narcissists lack the courage to step through that door. They stop at the threshold, look into the darkness, and turn away, choosing to repeat the old spiral. They fear truth more than pain, because truth can't be controlled, can't be played victim to, can't be decorated with pretty words. Truth has only one shape, and it reflects them. When they turn away from truth, the darkness devours what remains. The irony is that in that very moment, you, the one once wounded, become the bearer of light. Not the light of rescuing, but the light of awareness, the light that knows boundaries, knows who you are, knows that love is not the same as sacrificing yourself. You pass through the hell of manipulation without losing your humanity. You touched the bottom of grief without turning cold. You saw the worst in people and still believe in goodness. That is not weakness, it is the soul's maturity. When you no longer need others to see you, when you no longer need to prove you are enough, you become the very mirror a narcissist never dares to face, a real human being, imperfect but deep. They once used you as a tool to reflect their brilliance, but in the end you reflected back their truest part, the one they cannot bear. When they left, they thought they'd escaped. Yet everywhere they go, they see you in others' eyes, not your face, but the stillness of truth. They see you in the gaze that no longer believes, in the calm of the unafraid, in the way people refuse to be controlled. True light always spreads, even when its bearer has gone. On the other side of the journey, you understand, no one truly wins a fight with illusion. The death of illusion is liberation for both, but only one of you is lucid enough to move on. You don't need them to collapse for justice to feel real, because justice isn't punishment, it's the evolution of consciousness. You did what they could not, faced pain without running, faced darkness without losing your light. That's why you no longer fear them. They hold no power beyond memory, and memory seen in the light of awareness is only an old story. You've stepped out of the role of victim and become the witness, the one who sees, understands, and lets go. While they still fumble with broken shards, trying to reassemble an old image of themselves, you stand somewhere else where you don't need to reflect anyone, and you don't need anyone to reflect you. You are the light. And true light, once it knows itself, never turns back to seek approval. This isn't the end of the story between you and them. It's the end of the illusion and the beginning of soul sovereignty. Part 12. Living happily is the best answer. No more defenses, no exposés, no proving who was right or wrong. In the end, what hurts a narcissist most is not your anger, it's your indifference. And your peace, after all the wreckage, is the universe's silent verdict. Not because you took revenge, but because you rose above the game that once fed their ailing ego. At first, you won't notice. After leaving, life can feel like a desert. No laughter, no familiar rhythms, no morning messages. But slowly, pieces of your true self return. For the first time in months, you laugh from the heart. One afternoon, you watch a sunset without thinking of them. One night, you sleep through without checking your phone. In those small moments, you're rebuilding your soul. Jung wrote, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you can look at the darkness that once swallowed you, it stops being frightening. You see that the pain, fierce as it was, carried you exactly where you needed to be, awareness. You didn't just leave a person. You left behind the weaker version of yourself who believed that love meant limitless self-sacrifice. The day you begin to live happily isn't when you have everything. It's when you need nothing from them. No apology, no recognition, no price paid. You only need to breathe softly, deeply, truly. After so many suffocating days under their control, that breath is freedom. Imagine, they were used to your reactions. When they were cruel, you cried. When they turned cold, you begged. When they left, you chased. Every reaction proved their power. Now you don't react. You smile, you keep quiet, you thrive. They see photos of you with friends, traveling, investing in yourself, shining in a new light, and inside them rises a silent wave: shame, envy, bitterness, helplessness. No narcissist can stomach being replaced by peace. They can tolerate. Being hated, hatred is still a tie. But when you are happy without them, they feel as if they never existed. That strikes their deepest fear, the fear of invisibility. Psychologically, this is the onset of narcissistic mortification, ego collapse. They're forced to see that their greatness was never real, that their power depended on others' reactions. When you cut off that supply, you reclaim the energy they once siphoned. Returned to you, that energy becomes light. But true happiness is not a social media smile. True happiness is looking back without hatred. It's mentioning them without your chest tightening. It's feeling more compassion for yourself than resentment toward them. In the end, a narcissist is just another product of unawakened souls, manipulating because they don't know how to heal, controlling because they fear abandonment, hurting because they never learned love. Having weathered that storm, you need not carry revenge. Your evolution is the fairest judgment. One day they'll see you from afar online or through someone's story, and something will clutch at them. You are radiant, not a showy radiance, but a calm, grounded light that needs no proof. That light testifies that you've left their toxic field and are living from your true self. Meanwhile, they keep searching for your version in many faces. No matter how many they meet, they will never find your energy again. What they lost wasn't just a lover, it was a mirror for the soul. When you left, they lost their last chance to truly see themselves. So they continue the cycle: idealize, possess, destroy, discard. And you, with silence and courage, have stepped out of it. Here's an overlooked truth. Happiness after a narcissist doesn't come from the outside, not a new job, not a new person, not a trip. It comes the moment you accept there's nothing more you need to understand. No more analyzing why they did it. No need to know whether they regret it. No need to hear their backstory. You've gone far enough that their story no longer matters. Your happiness now lives in small things you once couldn't feel. A morning without anxiety, a slow coffee, a song that doesn't trigger memories. You smile gently at good people not from scarcity, but from a heart open without fear. That's a freedom a narcissist will never grasp. They remain bound by fear and control. From a Jungian view, this is ego rebirth, the self begins to speak. You no longer live by reaction, but by choice. You don't let others define your worth. You define it with each action, each breath. You realize true love is not clinging, but mutually seeing and honoring. The miracle is that you haven't just healed, you've transformed. Before, you gave love to be loved back. Now, you give because love is your nature. You no longer fear betrayal because your value isn't set by anyone's behavior. You don't play healer to anyone because every soul must walk through its own dark. You simply keep your light bright and it will reach the right people on its own. By living well, you prove that no one can destroy your soul unless you let them. Your love was once exploited, but now it's been refined into clarity. You don't love from fear, you love from awareness. And the universe will send you people on that frequency, those who come not to possess, but to grow together. They may still lie about you, smear you, try to blur your image, but they can't touch the energetic reality you inhabit. Truth has its own frequency, and time is the ally of honest souls. One day their lies will collapse, and what remains is the light you emanate through your life. Living happily doesn't deny the past. It honors that the past did its job. Every tear, every sleepless night, every scar each was part of the journey back to yourself. You are not a victim of a narcissist. You are a witness to rebirth. What defeats them forever is what they'll never grasp. From the darkness they created, a torch was lit, and that torch is you. Real happiness doesn't need display. It is quiet, steady, and contagious. It is walking through the place that once hurt most without trembling. It is looking at the one who harmed you and feeling only gratitude, because without them, you would never have learned to love yourself this deeply. So live, bloom, move forward. Every peaceful step is an answer to every wound. Every smile proves you have won not over anyone else, but over the fear within. That is the only lasting victory. And if one day they return or hear about you, what they'll feel won't be hatred, it will be a frightening emptiness. You've gone too far, to a level of energy they can no longer reach. You will simply smile, no bitterness, no smugness. Just ease the way someone smiles who knows light, never argues with darkness. So say nothing. Just live happy, calm, clear. Let your life stand as the loudest proof that true love never loses. It only changes form to deepen. And remember, your peace is thunder in their world. For someone who lives on illusion, nothing hurts more than seeing the person they trampled now shining not from revenge, but from having come home to themselves. That is the absolute victory. One day, you'll wake into a curious kind of quiet. No more voices from the past calling your name. No more unfinished questions. No more hunger to be understood or believed. There is only you and a peaceful breath in the morning. The sun rises as always, yet something in how you receive it has changed. The world no longer orbits your pain, but your awareness. That is the moment of true freedom, when you realize what you lost back then wasn't love, but the illusion of love. And what you find today isn't another person, it's yourself. When you've come this far, you begin to see that happiness is no longer a destination. It's a state of awareness. You don't need anything to happen to be happy, because you no longer live on conditions. You've seen it all. The deceit, the sweetness, the betrayal, the emptiness, and finally the light within you, the one they could never touch. From here, everything takes on a different meaning. Loneliness is no longer an enemy, but a faithful friend. Silence is no longer frightening, but a sanctuary where your soul can rest. You didn't walk through the storm to return and boast about your strength, but to learn there was nothing to prove. True strength doesn't perform, it radiates from inner steadiness. Like the sun, it never argues with the dark. It simply shines, and darkness disappears on its own. On a deeper level, you see, the narcissist was never truly an enemy. They were an awakener. They appeared to reflect the pieces of shadow you once denied: dependency, fear of abandonment, the belief that you must suffer to be loved. They shattered you, but from those fragments you saw your soul more clearly than ever. In a sense, they were the part you had to face to become whole. Forgiveness here isn't for their peace. It is for your freedom. Forgiveness is not excusing behavior, it is stopping the cycle of reaction. It's when you no longer let the old story script your present emotions. You stop saying, "They made me this way," and begin to say, "This is what I learned from it." From that stance, you are no longer a victim. You are a creator, turning injury into insight, shadow into consciousness. Carl Jung called this individuation the process of becoming yourself. No longer led by others' images, no longer living in reaction to the past, but living as a whole being. Along that path, pain was a stern teacher, and the narcissist a tool for awakening. You don't need to thank them, but you no longer hate them either. They are simply the part you have moved beyond. One day, you'll sit in a familiar cafe, watch people stream by, and smile at the memory of it all. Not because you miss them, but because you remember who you were, the one who believed, endured, fell, and still stood up again. That person wasn't foolish. That person was brave. Only souls who dare to love fully and give fully ever have the chance to awaken fully. Those who have never been broken will never know what it means to be whole. In the stillness of awareness, you'll feel something profound, a warm current rising, as if the universe were breathing with you. Because when you heal not only yourself, but also the collective of souls caught in the narcissist victim-healer loop. Your light spreads, not through words, but through presence. Others feel calm around you, not because you are trying to help, but because you are peace. This is the energy of a sovereign soul, no longer defined by who loves or hates you, no longer governed by approval, no longer dragged into others' emotional scripts. You stand in the world with an open heart and an upright spine. You don't need to prove worth. Worth needs no proof. It only needs to be lived. Go deeper still, and you begin to see the pattern of all things. No one enters your life by accident. The narcissist comes to teach you boundaries. Betrayal comes to teach you trust in yourself. Pain comes to teach endurance. And solitude comes to teach you that you were never truly alone. Every experience is part of the soul's metamorphosis, what Jung called the integration of the shadow, the marriage of light and dark within a human being. You no longer want to run from the dark. You look at it, smile, and say, "I see you." Seen darkness loses its power. That is when you become true light, not the fragile kind that depends on others, but an inner flame that cannot be extinguished. Now you feel the difference in your energy. Places that once made you anxious no longer touch you. People who once triggered old pain pass like a breeze. You no longer want revenge, nor to prove you're okay. You simply live, work, laugh, love, and let things unfold, because you understand real happiness needs no audience. If the narcissist saw you now, they wouldn't recognize you not because you look different, but because your energy has changed. Once you lived in reaction, now you live in choice. Once you loved to be validated, now you love to be yourself. Once you feared loss, now you understand nothing is truly lost, everything is transforming. You'll realize the most beautiful revenge is never their downfall. It is your rising. Every step you take, every joy you choose, every decision made from self-respect, these are sound waves sent into the universe, composing a resonance of healing. In being happy, you don't just win over them, you triumph over the ancestral fear that you are not enough. You will meet new people, souls learning their own lessons. This time, you won't enter from lack. You won't rush connection, won't strive to prove, won't get swept into the illusion of destined love. You will observe, feel, and give while staying centered, because you know true love isn't fusion. It is parallel journeying. It isn't losing yourself. It is growing together. With that maturity, a deep truth becomes clear. Every pain is a birth ritual for a new self. Nothing was meaningless. Without them, you would have lived, but you might never have touched this depth within. So you need not regret. The past is no longer a burden, but a syllabus. As you rewrite your life, you notice every page bears the mark of light, even the darkest ones. You see that no one can harm you forever, because every wound contains a door to a higher awareness. You stop asking, why did they do it? And start asking, what did I learn from it? That question is the key to a peace no manipulator can take. In the end, you stand in life with a heart free of resentment, free of fear, expecting nothing. You see that what you once called the end was only the beginning of a new cycle, the cycle of light. The narcissist may pass through your life again, but they can no longer leave an imprint. They become a lesson, not a tragedy. A past chapter, not a fate. When your inner light grows strong, you see that every former sorrow served the evolution of your soul. Nothing was wasted. Every scar is a glyph carved into your body saying, I returned from the dark, and I know the way home. And home is within you. No one can take it. No one can touch the peace you've created. No one can make you lose yourself because you have seen your worth in the light of awareness. You live happily, not to answer anyone, not to prove anything. You live happily because that is the natural state of a free soul. You live happily because you finally understand. No one can give you love. They can only awaken it within you. And you, after a long journey of breaking, aloneness, and rebirth, have found it. So there is nothing more to say. No need to look back. The past has finished its work. Now begins a new chapter of peace, of wisdom, of light. And if someone asks, what happened between you and them? You can smile and say, nothing at all. I learned to love myself. And that is the true ending. No noise, no bitterness, no gloating, only light. And you, the one who has come home.